Welcome back to The Deep Dive, where we take you deeper into the stuff you're already into. This time, we're getting into the cat stuff. So if you're all about giving your feline overlords the best care ever, well, you've come to the right place. We're going to be diving deep into some awesome insights from the Kitties and Cats 2 podcast.
That's right, and I'm excited to break it all down with you.
Me too. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's lay it all out. The whole point of this deep dive is to help our listeners become like cat whisperers, right? Like truly understanding our cats. So where do we even begin with that?
I think a good place to start is remembering that cats are obligate carnivores, which we hear all the time. But sometimes I feel like we kind of just gloss over that. Like, what does it actually mean in practice?
Yeah, they eat meat.
So it's way more than just a preference.
Okay, I'm listening.
Their whole system is designed to thrive on meat.
What do you mean by their whole system?
Like literally their entire digestive system, their metabolism, everything's geared towards processing animal protein.
Okay, so it's not just that they like it, they need it.
Exactly. Their digestive tract.
Yeah.
It's actually way shorter than a dog's or ours. So they're not really good at breaking down plants. They need those concentrated nutrients from meat.
That's wild. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and it makes you think twice about what you're putting in their bowl.
Right, yeah, totally. It's kind of overwhelming, though. There's so much cat food out there. How do we even know what's good?
All right, so listen up. Become a label detective. First clue, the ingredient list.
Oh, the ingredient list.
First ingredient should always be a named meat. Like chicken, salmon, beef, the real deal.
Okay, got it. So what about all those vague ones? Meat byproducts or animal meal?
Yeah, see, those are the red flags. You don't really know what's in there. Could be anything.
Transparency is key.
Exactly. You want to know what you're feeding your cat.
That makes total sense. So we've decoded the ingredients list. Now, what about the eternal question, dry food versus wet food? What's the verdict?
I don't think it's a battle. I think they both have their strengths, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so dry kibble, it's actually good for their teeth. Like the crunching helps scrape away plaque, and it's super convenient.
Looks like a built-in toothbrush.
Pretty much. Now, wet food, on the other hand, it's way closer to what they'd eat in the wild, moisture-wise. And this is great for their urinary tract. Cats on dry food, they can get dehydrated.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and wet food also tends to be higher in protein, which is super important for our little carnivores.
Okay, so you're saying maybe a mix is the best, like both dry and wet.
It's a great option. It gives them balance and some variety. Yeah. And let's be honest, cats can be picky, so keeping things interesting can be a good strategy.
Yeah, you're telling me. Speaking of keeping things interesting, what about the different life stages? Like a kitten is very different from a senior cat, right?
Totally. We got to adjust their diet as they grow.
Kittens, they're like little bundles of energy. Right?
Love zooming around. They need a diet that's going to support all that growth and playing. High in calories and protein.
So like rocket fuel for kittens.
Exactly. Then as they get older, their metabolism slows down, right?
Yeah, they get a bit more chill.
Adult food is more about maintaining a healthy weight and, giving them the right balance for their everyday activities.
And what about senior cats?
The golden years. So senior cats may be less active and have different needs. So senior formulas, they usually have fewer calories and extra supplements for their joints and their brains, to keep them sharp. It's like tailoring their care to each stage of life, And speaking of tailored care, let's talk about portions, like how much to give them.
Yeah, because cats aren't always the best at knowing when to stop, right?
Exactly. Some cats are like bottomless pits, but overfeeding, that can lead to obesity. And that's a big problem for cats.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It can lead to all sorts of health problems like diabetes, arthritis, even heart disease.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I got to find that sweet spot. Enough food, but not too much.
So how do we figure that out?
Well, first thing, check the feeding guidelines on the food bag or can. But remember, those are just general guidelines, right? Every cat's different. Think about their age, how active they are, their metabolism, all that stuff.
Okay, so a playful cat might need more than a lazy cat.
Exactly. And if you're ever unsure, your vet's the best person to ask. They can help you make a personalized feeding plan.
That's good advice. And speaking of vets, what about food sensitivities and allergies? How can we tell if our cat's reacting badly to something?
Ooh, that's a good one. Cats, they can be kind of subtle about it. You got to pay attention.
Like, what should we be looking for?
Well, keep an eye out for excessive scratching or like upset tummies, vomiting or diarrhea. Even changes in behavior, that can be a sign.
Oh, really? behavior too.
Yeah, like if your cat suddenly gets super grumpy or withdrawn after a meal, it could be something in their food.
Wow, so much to consider. And what are the usual suspects? Like what ingredients are most likely to cause problems?
It's often grains. And some protein sources can be tricky too.
So if we think our cat has a sensitivity, what's the best thing to do?
Talk to your vet. They might recommend an elimination diet.
Elimination diet. I've heard of that, but not sure what it is.
It's kind of like playing detective. You basically feed your cat a super simple diet for a while,
Like how simple?
just one protein source, and maybe one carb. And you do that for a few weeks, see if things improve.
Oh, okay.
And if they do, then you slowly start adding other ingredients back in one by one.
Oh, I see. To see which one causes the problem.
Exactly. It's a process of elimination, literally.
Oh, I get it. Smart. Okay, so before we move on, I got to ask about treats. Like who can resist giving those little guys a little something extra?
I know, those pleading eyes. But we gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Treats are great for bonding and, rewarding good behavior, but this should be a treat, not a main course.
Right. Everything in moderation.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Treats should be no more than 10% of their daily calories.
Okay, the 10% rule. Got it.
So yeah, the occasional treat's fine, but we don't want to turn them into treataholics.
That's funny. And are there any healthier treat options out there?
Definitely. Look for things like freeze-dried meats or dental chews. They're tasty and good for them.
Nice. Okay, so we've covered food choices, portions, all that stuff. But what about water? I see my cat drinking, but how do I know if you're getting enough?
That's such a good question. Hydration's super important for cats, but it's often overlooked.
Okay. Why is it so important?
Especially if they're on mostly dry food, cats can get dehydrated, and that can lead to urinary tract problems.
Oh, wow, that's serious. So how can we make sure they drink enough?
Well, fresh water every day, that's key. And cats, they're picky. A stale bowl just won't do.
Nope. They'll turn their noses up at it.
Exactly. So maybe try a water fountain. Some cats love those. The running water sound, it's like a little stream in their home.
It's like bringing the outdoors in.
Yeah, it appeals to their instincts.
Yeah.
And of course, wet food, that adds moisture to their diet too.
So a multi-pronged approach. Okay, now shifting gears a bit here, let's talk about their instincts, like those wild cat instincts. They still have those, right?
Oh, absolutely. Cats are domesticated, sure, but they're not that far removed from their wild cousins.
So how do we cater to those instincts?
Well, for example, you ever notice how they like to eat from high places?
Oh, yeah. My cat's always trying to sneak food off the counter.
It's totally an instinct thing. In the wild, eating up high gives them a sense of security. They can keep an eye out for danger while they munch.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about being mischievous, it's about feeling safe.
Exactly. And another thing is, they prefer to eat multiple small meals throughout the day rather than one or two big ones.
Oh, like grazing?
Yeah, kinda. It's like how they'd hunt in the wild. Catching a little something here and there.
So it's better to give them smaller portions more often?
Generally, yeah. It's more natural for them. And it can help with portion control too, to prevent overeating.
That makes sense. All this stuff about their instincts, it's fascinating. It's like we're getting a peek into their wild side.
And the more we understand their instincts, the better we can take care of them.
Totally. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I know you have a final thought to share with our listeners, something to ponder as they continue their cat parenting journey.
It's amazing to me. Cats have been our companions for, thousands of years?
Forever, basically.
But they still have this air of mystery about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Like they're holding on to a little bit of their wild side.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes them so cool, right? We give them the best food, comfy beds, all the love, but they're still these independent little creatures.
It's a good reminder that they're not just tiny dogs or something. They have their own way of seeing the world.
Exactly. And I think as cat owners, we got to learn to speak their language, figure out what they need, and give them an environment where they can be themselves,
So it's about letting them be cats, not trying to make them into something they're not.
Yeah, respecting their catness. And that goes for everything. Their food, their playtime, even their need for alone time. Some cats are cuddly, some are more like, don't touch me.
Right. It's all about understanding their personality.
Exactly. And speaking of that, we've talked a lot about the physical stuff like food and water, but their emotional well-being is super important too. Like, how do we make sure they're not just healthy, but happy?
That's a great point. Because they can't exactly tell us how they're feeling, right?
Right, but they can show us, so we got to pay attention. And one of the biggest things is enrichment.
What do you mean by enrichment?
Like keeping their minds and bodies active. Cats get bored just like we do.
So, like, what kind of things can we do?
Playtime is huge. Toys that tap into their hunting instincts, like, feathery wands, laser pointers, things like that.
Yeah, those are always a hit.
It gets them moving, and it's mentally stimulating for them, too.
Like a workout for their brains.
Exactly. And vertical space, like cat trees or shelves, that lets them climb, and it gives them a sense of security being up high, like we talked about before.
Oh, right, that makes sense. So it's about creating an environment that caters to their instincts.
Yes. And even simple things, like a window perch so they can watch birds, or different textures to scratch on.
Keep things interesting.
And of course, quality time with you. Cuddles on the couch, brushing, even just talking to them. Those little moments mean a lot to them.
It's all about that bond.
And when we take the time to understand them, that bond just gets stronger.
I love that. This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. I feel like I'm seeing my own cat in a whole new light.
That's what it's all about, right? Providing the best care for our cats isn't just about the basics. It's about seeing them as individuals, understanding their quirky little personalities, and giving them what they need to thrive.
It's like learning to appreciate their catness.
Exactly. And the more we learn about them, the more we realize how much they teach us about patience, independence, living in the moment, enjoying the simple things.
Beautifully said. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cat care. We hope you learned a thing or two and maybe even feel a little closer to your feline friend.
My pleasure. It's been fun.
And remember, the journey of learning never ends. Stay curious, keep those observations coming, and most importantly, give those kitties some extra love from us. Until next time, happy cat parenting, everybody.